a rule though that you're supposed to like wait 3 seconds before you speak after you have a thought? That's something where it's like for people that maybe talk too much, everyone tells them like wait 3 seconds or something, or it's like your first impulse isn't your best impulse, or something like that. I don't know. I feel like there was always something that was kind of revolved around that, where it's like, don't say the first thing that comes into your head. Maybe like the third or fourth thing you should say. Maybe it was Socrates or Plato or something.
No.
Very wise.
I don't know.
Very wise.
I don't know. I've been in this discussion with my dad before, because I've talked to him about, I remember when I took a photography class, my photography teacher said the same thing. It was like, you have an idea for like a photo that you want to take, and usually the first time you attempt it, it's not going to be very good. But if you try and you like change the lighting and the editing, and maybe by like the fifth or sixth try, it'll be something really good. So have patience with yourself, be persistent. And I told my dad that, and he was like, nah, usually my first idea is the right one. I was like, oh, okay, well. Because
must be nice.
My photography teacher was only speaking to stupid people.
That's why I'm in City College.
Yeah, it was a city college.
Yeah, interesting. All right, well, let's kick it off with episode 27, I believe.
Yeah, man.
Nice.
Whatever we're on to next. Man, we're done with the frog farming. We've talked about, gosh, Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
Talked about all kinds of crazy things.
Are you out of stuff?
No.
No?
No. I actually was deciding between two different things today that are honestly kind of close together, but maybe like an hour ago.
Super episode.
Maybe like an hour ago, I decided, okay, I'm going to go with this one.
Okay, cool.
I made up my mind.
I picked my thing 23 minutes ago.
Yeah?
I also had a lot of things to pick from, but there's always things rattling around in the old attic. So,
yeah. The noggin.
Yeah, the noodle.
The noodle.
Yeah, I'll go first if you don't mind.
Yeah, go for it, man.
All right, so this isn't a coherent thought or like a nice, there's no one.
I expect nothing more.
There's no nice one-liner to kind of like encapsulate all this in, but it kind of has to do with what we were talking about a couple weeks ago, or actually last week, with the psychology.
Oh, yeah, okay.
And I don't, like, there was more to expand, I think, there, that now I'm like, as I kept thinking about it, there's just certain things that I'm like, oh, we could totally like go off in that direction. And so one of the things that you brought up, I think that was, or I guess it just kind of came up as we were talking about how, like through the ages, like like a lot of these like psychological things might have existed, and they might have had different names for them, but like in some ways, like people were still depressed, whatever, 1,000 years ago, people were still, experiencing all these things that we now have like psychological labels for. But, that maybe things weren't as different as we kind of make them out to be. And so that was kind of what I was going to get into, is I've been reading the Brothers Karamazov, and it's a very like psychological work. It's like he's just analyzing these characters to death, that he's making up. And I'm sure it's because he's a the author's a great study of human character and nature. And so it's just like, I think it's 1860 it was written around. And so it's like fairly long ago, but each of these problems he's kind of discussing in society is like the exact same stuff we're talking about today. And it's kind of uncanny, like that, like if you just changed a few words, you would think it was written about like this election or something, or like this political climate, or just different things that people are still wrestling over, and different questions. So like some examples of that are they're talking about like the legal system and like criminals, and it's like, well, the criminal system's kind of flawed because you send these criminals away, you lock them up or you punish them or whatever, and it's like the system only makes them like pushes them further in that extreme, and it doesn't actually rehabilitate people. And it's like because of that, it's like our legal system is so corrupt, and and we need to change it, and so it's like funny because that's exactly what we're talking about now. It's like, well, just putting people in prison isn't the answer. It's like you need to actively engage with them and rehabilitate, and like not like don't make the punishment like a life sentence, even if they're getting out in a couple of years, in some metaphorical sense. Or just talking about. Actually, one of the funny things was, remember when we were talking a week ago about you were talking about your practice and how you're kind of more of a specialist than a generalist, and we were like, it seems like now the world's kind of become more specialized than ever, and it's like everybody has their like little. You're not just a doctor now. You got to be like a specialist, and then you're the specialist of the specialist, and everything gets like super fractured. And one of these chapters in this book, he's like complaining about how just that very thing, like doctors are like all specializing now, and there's no like holistic people to kind of like treat everything. It's like I have to go to Vienna to go get this, to go get my nose checked out, but then this one guy only does the right nostril, and I have to go get someone for the left nostril.
That's weird. Yeah, it's like weird that there's nothing new under the sun.
Kind of.
Yeah. Huh. That's interesting.
So they're still arguing over politics. They're still, trying to figure out religion and all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Have you read like older books or anything like in that vein, or like maybe not even, I don't know. Have you read like older works or like Socrates or anything like that, or like old Greek writers or something that like you can pick up patterns from what like modern culture that you would see back then, maybe?
Well, yeah, because sometimes you read these old books, and I mean, this was kind of what we were discussing previously. Is it's like how much have people changed versus just the language of psychology changed? It's like if you were to read some old Greek tale, the Odyssey or something like that, and it's like, and Homer's heart was wrought with fear within him, and his doom.
That's called anxiety.
Yeah. And today it's like, oh, he was suffering from anxiety. It's like that was just general stress disorder. Whatever the thing is. It's like, oh, okay. But at the same time, it's like maybe they even had the language for that back then, but because it's sort of this like romanticized story, like if you were telling a story today, you might not even want to say something like, and he had clinical depression. Like if you were telling this great tale, and it was like, and then Luke Skywalker had general anxiety disorder. It's like
put the clinical like notation at the bottom and sources.
It's like, well, that takes me right out of the story. You want to say something more dramatic and intense, like his heart was burning with anguish. It's like you want to say something like that. So it's like they might have even had the language back then, and they might have had full understanding of it, but maybe they just chose in their records to write it differently. I don't even know.
Yeah. Yeah, because it leaves more to the imagination, or it like maybe imparts something even deeper than just a diagnosis.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was interesting. That was something I was actually trying to convey. I guess this is your dad's episode, but when we were talking to him the other day, and it was like, you're wondering, or he's wondering with like Genesis, it's like why is it not necessarily like super scientific, or or we were wondering like why the language might be that way, and it's like, calling it lights instead of calling it a star or a gas ball or something, and it's like, it could be even that, where it's like, it's less about what the scientific term for something is, and more about language that shows the pattern of something, or like the heart of it, which isn't necessarily just a diagnosis or like a clinical expression. So,
yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, I think it is interesting when you think of psychology in like an ancient context. It seems so modern. Like I think the study of psychology came about in like the early 1900s or something like that. Like I don't know, it's like super new when you compare other things like cartography or astronomy, looking at the stars, or just any other random mathematics, other fields of study. Human history,
or like even the humanities,
agriculture, just things that people have like studied and worked on for like thousands of years. And psychology, I think we just formed an official language to it and made it like something that we study at school, you know, but I think people have known about it, maybe even studied it, maybe like ancient doctors studied it, you know, and just used different words for it.
Well, yeah, I mean, like when it really boils down to it, you're just tracking like emotion, right? Or like human behavior and emotions, I guess, to some extent.
Behavior, emotions, like internal thought patterns.
Yeah. Well, just being like a person who studies humanity, it's like you pick up on that stuff naturally. You don't need like a degree to be in tune with what's going on under the hood for people.
Yeah.
You know. So, yeah, so that's like something I've kind of been thinking about a lot. It's like, and just it's funny the way like, you know, the language differs for these same things, but you know, it's like in the book they'll call like women who are like hysterical wailers.
Oh my gosh, no way.
And so it's just like, yeah, and it's not even like, I don't think derogatory necessarily, but it's just you know, it's like people who are having a hard time being consoled, and it's like I can think of some people like that these days.
Oh man,
you know, okay. and it's like legit in response to like legitimate stuff, like their kids dying or you know, like whatever, their husband beating them, but it's like kind of intense stuff.
Dude, that's crazy.
Yeah.
I gotta just go on a small tangent because you just brought something up, and all the women listening, please forgive me. I'm just literally I'm teaching some academic things here, okay?
No dads, no.
This is not my opinion. I'm just stating word origin facts here. But the word hysterical, actually the hyster word, that word part of it, the hyster for hysterical, actually means the uterus.
Oh.
And when women get a hysterectomy, they're removing their uterus.
Interesting.
So literally when you're saying hysterical, it's like very much a feminine word referring to like a female organ. Yeah, it's a really interesting thing.
I wouldn't have put those two together, but now that you say it, it makes total sense.
Yeah, right. So that's why there's always kind of a weird thing that like whenever you hear the word hysterical, like you don't usually think of that as referring to men. Like a lot of times people don't call men hysterical. There's like, because traditionally,
like they might have been hysterically laughing or something, but it's not
like a man and a woman could have the exact same emotional behavior, reaction, whatever, and somehow society is like more prone to call a woman hysterical, and the man, they would say something different.
Unhinged or
whatever.
Deranged.
Yeah. There's some other thing that's wrong with that guy.
Yeah.
You know?
Usually something mental.
Yeah.
Yeah. Huh.
Kind of interesting.
That's fascinating.
Yeah. Wow. And I don't know exactly when that naming came about, but I mean that's an old Greek and Latin thing.
I was about to say it sounds pretty Greek.
Yeah.
Huh.
So
yeah, the Greeks kind of amazing with how they like tapped into a lot of just very primal things in their language. It's kind of remarkable, actually. Like I'm sure you noticed that even just studying the Bible and stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's like both specific but also nuanced enough to like cover a lot of ground, I guess. And so
yeah, it's a weird thing studying like Greek and Latin, teaching anatomy, and then studying the Bible and learning like ancient Hebrew and seeing just different, you know, I mean, obviously our English language is based off of Greek and Latin, and so Hebrew is different, but it is just interesting, like the comparison of words and how things are structured and what it means, and it is really interesting to think about that.
Yeah. Huh.
Yeah.
Well, I guess I'm going to keep going on the women topic now that you now that you added some info there.
Women, hysterical women in psychology.
Yeah.
It's okay. We have an editing button.
Get the bleep button ready. No.
Oh man.
One like positive, cool thing I heard about women.
It's good. You're starting off on the right foot here. This is safe.
Oh no!
Oh man!
You can't just like. There's no good way to start that.
There's no.
But I've been watching this thing about Ethiopia, basically.
Okay.
And I've been very maybe not obsessed is the right word, but so through the Orthodox community and through mostly through that, it's, you know, there's like, they obviously like the Mother Mary and they like, you know, kind of the iconography of that. But it is really interesting where there's this whole tradition surrounding that where they don't really talk about it that much, and it's not something that's like,
wait, like they really like Mother Mary, but they don't talk about her.
Yeah,
it's like we like her, but hush hush.
Kind of.
That's weird.
Yeah, but there's a reason for it, because it's so when you come to like this feminine presence and energy, it's a thing of mystery essentially.
Oh,
like it's identified with mystery, or with like potential or unknown, or kind of hidden things or veiled things. And so you almost so it's like this thing that's present, but by like discussing it and analyzing it and using like your masculine side on it, it actually like destroys the mystery, it like kind of unveils this thing that shouldn't be unveiled. And it's because when you like, and then it's like shining a light in a place it shouldn't be shown, because then it's like once everything's known, there's no room for like miracles in a sense, or there's no room for,
that's interesting,
like things to come into existence from. And so everything is like accounted for and like rigid. And so when you take that like nuanced, creative, dark, ambiguous space away, then like the power is lost there in some sense.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Don't ruin the mysterious, miraculous Mother Mary with your masculinity.
Kind of,
I just put 5 M's together. That's nice. All I was trying to do.
It's pretty good, dude. So it's for me, it's like super frustrating because I want to know everything. And I'm like, well, why is it that way? Why is it that way? And it's like, you shouldn't ask. It's like, well, that's frustrating.
Oh, that's interesting.
And it's like, it's just something you have to like, and I haven't like talked to anybody personally. It's just things I've heard, but it's more like something you have to like, to fully experience, you just have to dwell on it and not try to contain it and not try to like, put it in some sort of order that you come up with.
You can only know through women's intuition. It's like that thing where men are like, we understand how men work, but we don't understand how women work. And then women are like, we understand how women work and we know how men work.
Well, I don't know. Some of the women I've talked to, so they don't know how women work either. Actually, most, to be honest. So I don't know. I think, but I like it is, they are, I think the feminine archetype is much more mysterious and like, I mean, I think even to themselves, honestly. No, I won't speak for too many women out there, but just from what I've heard, from what I've studied and understood, it's like, it's even more like, it's also confusing for them too, And so yeah, that goes into basically, so yeah, you have that feminine archetype, which is more like mysterious and stuff. And then taking it all the way back to Ethiopia.
That's right.
Where this all started.
And then there's psychology behind that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So somewhere way back there. We took a left turn.
Psychology's way back there.
Yeah. I don't think psychology's part of the mix anymore, to be honest. We took a boat.
It's my challenge now. I gotta find a way how to bring Ethiopia back to psychology. Anyway, keep going.
Good luck. Psychology's more of a masculine thing, I think.
Oh man.
But anyway, so you have basically Solomon and the Queen of Sheba, right? And so it's this like super interesting dynamic where, because Ethiopia kind of, at least in the Orthodox view, represents like the foreign basically, or the outside order. And so in that sense, it's kind of already feminine, but basically you have, oh man, this reminds me of another thing I need to tell you.
Okay.
But anyway, so the Queen of Sheba comes, and so there's this idea that so the woman, like the feminine presence manifests kind of like the mystery. And so it's also tied in with like sphinxes and stuff, where it's like, they ask you the riddle, and so they present the question that needs to be answered. And so and when you do that, then usually it's like followed by riches, or like, you unlock the treasure or this thing. So it's this really cool like interplay. So the Queen of Sheba comes, she asks Solomon all these questions, like that's the first thing she does. She kind of like probes him. She like offers them the space. And so then he like engages with his wisdom.
Because he was the greatest psychologist.
He probably was.
He knew what was happening in people's minds.
Yeah. Yeah. I can tell you a messed up story about that too. But
Okay.
But anyway, so it's like, so yeah, she like kind of presents this like mysterious question to Solomon, and then he, in turn responds to that challenge and that like mystery by providing answers and by like providing structure. And then in turn she like basically gives him a bunch of treasure. And then and then probably have a relationship together.
I don't know. I honestly am skeptical about the Queen of Sheba and Solomon ever getting it on. Yeah. And I'm also skeptical about whether she was actually from Ethiopia. But those are two other tangents that maybe are real far off.
Because here's the weird story.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
Because one of the stories that, like, the extra biblical stories about them is that Solomon orders a feast. And so he tells the chef, basically, put extra pepper in all the food and don't serve any water during the whole meal.
Oh, weird.
But place a huge vat of water in my bedroom.
Okay.
And so she...
That's not subtle.
Yeah, some of these old stories are very on the nose. So she like starts to eat and then figures out what he's doing, and then next thing leads to next, and then
how did she know the water was in there? She was like, I need water, where is it? And he was like, it's by my bed. Hint, hint.
Probably, yeah.
Yeah.
But anyway, it's like when you have these foreign elements mixing, it's like the product is often trickery, It's like you see when Jacob goes out to Laban, it's like what's like the primary mode of like interacting with each other? It's like trickery once you kind of get out like outside of the order of things. But anyway, in that tradition, it's an Ethiopian one. Solomon has a son with her, and then that son later comes back and steals the Ark of the Covenant and takes it to Ethiopia.
I've heard of that theory. Before. Yeah. I think actually Graham Hancock wrote a book that there was because he wrote a fictional book about the Ark of the Covenant, and I think it somehow takes place in like Ethiopia or something. I can't remember. Anyway,
yeah. So it's still there to this day.
Ooh, the Ethiopians have it. Yeah, that's crazy.
Who does? But yeah. So that's anyway. So all that to say, is that
all that to say that Solomon is the wisest psychologist.
Maybe,
except that he uses it for evil and seducing women.
Yeah, maybe.
Oh man, he knew how to play weird women's mind games.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, have you ever read that book called The Game? Yeah, I don't necessarily recommend this, people, but it's an interesting book.
It's on our do not buy book list.
Yeah,
along with Geometry for Ocelots.
It's maybe one of those books that like I wouldn't really recommend, but I would potentially recommend reading what's the name? Neil Strauss's second book, which is called The Truth, which was good, but it was basically how he became this like pickup artist, and he learned the psychology of women and like how to walk into a bar, find an attractive woman, and then like use his psychology mastermind to get her phone number in like 10 minutes or whatever, And he just had all these weird conversational pieces, and you have to give her attention, then ignore her. Then your friend has to talk to her. Then she's like desperate to get your attention again. And then your friend walks away, and then now she can have you again. And then you've got to like say something to make her feel bad about herself, but then be like, okay, I'm going to leave. I'm not interested. And she's like, wait, can't we see each other again? And like, I'll give you my number. And like, it's like this whole weird manipulative thing. And then in his second book, The Truth, it was like, don't do all those things. Monogamy is actually really great. You should just find somebody and settle down. Weird. Anyway, it was kind of different. Yeah, it was interesting.
Huh.
Yeah. But they're very R-rated books.
Did he have like a conversion or something, or was this just?
Basically, Neil Strauss, after being a total player, like serious level player, he finally finds a woman that he's like, I love this woman. I want to settle down with her. But he'd just been like living the hookup life for so long that he didn't know how to be monogamous. So he finally told her, I just can't do it. I can't be with one woman. I've got to like be with many women for the rest of my life. I have to be, polyamorous. So he literally, I mean, this is according to him. This is his own sort of, memoir account. According to him, he went to Paris, found a bunch of chicks, created his own little harem in some like Paris flat, and like lived the harem life for like a few months. And then it was so much weird bickering and infighting, and he couldn't make them all happy. And he was like, dude, I just missed that one chick that I wanted to stay with. And so finally he like leaves all the chicks.
Wow.
And he like sees the one gal at like a wedding, and they're both like still single. And he's like, can we try again? And then they got married. And I guess they're still married to this day, and they have
kids. You had
kids.
to take an STD test.
Yeah, right. Anyway, that's a really long trip. But I don't know how I got on that.
Okay.
Women psychology.
The truth.
The truth. Yeah, the truth. That's what it is.
Don't read the
so
game.
Solomon needed to read the truth because he was polyamorous. That guy probably had STDs.
So, yeah, and then there was one other thing I was going to bring up from all that.
Anyway.
Yeah. I need to get off about 3 exits ago.
Ethiopia.
I remember my thing.
The Orthodox Church tradition.
Yeah.
Talking about women and the mystery.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
But yeah, the Queen of Sheba. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I remember what I was going to tell you.
All right.
So, okay, this is even further away. Still has to do with Ethiopians, though.
Okay.
So at least there's that tangent, or that connection. But okay, so there's this super interesting idea. So if Ethiopia is kind of like the strangeness outside the order or whatever, it's like, it represents the foreigner, the foreign, whatever. So when Christ comes to like redeem everything, right? He's redeeming it all back into himself. And so there's like, he makes ways for like the foreigner and for like the Gentile to come back, basically, or be redeemed. And so the eunuch is like Ethiopian.
Oh, right.
And he's, so it's like, not only is he like an Ethiopian and strange, but then it's like he's also the eunuch, right? Mm-hmm. So it's like the strange of the strange. Mm-hmm. It's like he's like the furthest away from like God and the temple, basically, at that point in time, right? You couldn't like go into the temple if you were castrated. And so, he's like basically the farthest away from organized religion at that time, or the way or the truth or whatever. And so what he's reading in Isaiah, it's like Isaiah 53 or something. But basically, what's really cool is, I forget exactly what he's reading. Maybe
I can't remember.
Yeah.
And it's something in Isaiah that referred to Christ.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's as much as I remember.
Yeah, so but it's really weird because if you go like right before that, like a chapter before that, it's kind of talking about, the temple is like going to be like an inclusive place or something, And then when you go to chapter 56, like just 3 chapters later, it actually like specifically mentions like eunuchs and stuff. Yeah, like being, basically, oh man, maybe I'll edit the video and put in like the chapter, but It's pretty cool. It just like basically talks about like people from the ends of the earth like being drawn in, and like mentions the eunuchs specifically, that they're going to be like given a new name, essentially, and a new identity.
Wow.
And they'll be like, first in the kingdom or something along those lines. And so it's super wild. Yeah. Cause you're like, the verse he's reading and the verse it mentions, it doesn't say anything about eunuchs, but then it's like, if you could just go back and look in there in that context, it's like he was actually reading about eunuchs in some weird way or something.
That's crazy.
Or like the verse that was like, or the area of the Bible that drew him to salvation was like uniquely tied up in his story.
Yeah.
And so, yeah. Yeah. Kind of a weird Bible connection there.
Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, I never thought of that.
Yeah, I'll have to look it up after this and show you.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, so I think that's most of mine.
Are we going to title your sharing thing as psychology or as Ethiopia?
Or as
Ethiopian psychology, eunuchs? I don't even know what we're calling that. I don't know, people. Take away from that what you will.
I gave you the disclaimer at the beginning.
Yeah.
That, I wasn't going to have a title. So.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah. And I don't know how that has to do with psychology. Those later things definitely don't have anything to do with psychology.
Well, it would be a stretch.
But I guess it's more about like how old patterns are still present, even to this day, like just with different names. And even like just the end of time stuff, it's like, in this book, people are like talking about, it's like, it must be the end of days because things are so bad. And, the religious people are like atheism has never had a stronger hold in the world, and people are rejecting God. And, it's like I hear that quite often.
Yeah. People always think it's the end of the world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or, Christians are always like, well, the world's just becoming more secular, and, no one will recognize God in 5 years.
Yeah.
Or whatever it is. It's like people back then, like, the churches are dying, secularism is taking over, atheism is, the hot new thing. And before that, it was paganism is like, the thing, and there's no true believers left. And it's like, dang.
Dude, the Christians always think the world's going to end and like complete chaos will erupt from like some atheistic paganist craziness. And then you have people on the climate change side who are always like, the world's going to end next year from climate change. And then it still continues. There's always these world enders. You know?
Well, and you would expect the same thing. Like, so you see that in the Bible, right? Like the Old Testament is a pattern of the New Testament. It's like the same thing happened twice almost, it's like in just different varying manifestations, right? It's like there was sacrifice, there was atonement, there was these things, and then it happened at a greater degree in the New Testament, where there was, like there's echoes of all these patterns, like through the ages, and like that's not to say that like obviously there'll be a big at some point there'll be a final one because things are finite, but like even the pattern of like revelation or creation, it's like those patterns, like pattern of creation, like you like studying Genesis, right? It's like you see those same patterns of creation played out in everything. It's like the Garden of Eden plays a role in the temple, or in just like the kingdom of heaven, or all these different things. So it's like you can tie those things back to the original one. And I think just like with the final judgment or whatever, it's like you'll find those things tied in, or end times or whatever, you'll find that tied in 70 AD, and the whatever Black Plague, or it's like all these different times are gonna manifest Antichrist, or just different things like that. So it's like it's one of those areas where it's like when everybody's convinced that they're right, it's probably because they all are right in some way. So
interesting.
Yeah. And so it's like mini end times before you get to like the final one.
Yeah.
Anyway, thanks for the rant.
Yeah, man. Okay. Cool.
I didn't know I had that much to say, to be honest.
Yeah, we always have a lot to say. It's surprising. It's surprising how much we have to say about things that it's like, I don't know what to say about this exactly, but here's the thing. And it's like, oh, I thought of like 10 things to say about that. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Well, so what inspires cope?
Yeah, okay, so I was continuing further down the Lord of the Rings track like a week ago.
Uh-oh.
And we were discussing the Christ symbolism of Lord of the Rings and whatnot, and then I was, rewatching Lord of the Rings with my wife, and then I said, man, let's also watch the behind the scenes of Lord of the Rings, which she was like, okay. And she watched like one episode with me, and then she was like, I'm done.
Twice as long and 3 times as exciting.
Yeah. I was like, well, it's just as good. No, she fell asleep like 45 minutes in. No, but I was watching it, and in the first like 20 minutes of the behind the scenes, they get into all this like how Tolkien wrote the book and what was his methodology and his ideas behind it. And they were bringing up a really interesting point that I felt like I have struggled with Lord of the Rings. I wanted to talk about, and it kind of comes back to the symbolism of Christ that's in there. But I think if I were to give this like a 1-word title, okay. All right.
We locked ourselves in.
YouTube keywords. Yeah. I think I would call it like parables, or just like a story that has a mystery to it and does not have like a direct allegory or like a parallel of some kind,
But it has like some inherent meaning.
There's some meaning to it, but you almost have to like figure it out. And there's like multiple possibilities of meaning, like telling a story that's not blatantly obvious. Because that was Tolkien's thing, is that Tolkien, and if you read the very beginning where he talks in the beginning of Lord of the Rings, he specifically says this is not an allegory. This book, I just wrote a fun story, and it doesn't directly point to anything.
Yeah.
Now, I think that maybe he subconsciously put things in, or maybe he did put things in but kind of denied it, or whatever it is. But like, there are some symbols in there that's like, that really looks like Christ or some other things going on, you know?
Yeah.
And I think it's almost impossible because he was immersed in that kind of world. Like, it's impossible to get that kind of stuff out of his head.
He's pretty devout Catholic too.
Yeah, you know? And so I think it's interesting though, but one of his points was that he didn't want to make it an allegory. He didn't want to create direct symbolism to things, because he felt like if you create that, then the symbol has only one dimension to it. He was like, if the ring equates to something like sin, then that's all it could ever mean. It couldn't mean anything else, because I've basically made it mean something. But if I try to keep it somewhat mysterious, then people could kind of apply different things based on what they think is relevant. And then it goes from something that has one dimension of meaning to almost like infinite meaning. It has like a lot of different ideas of how it could mean something. Mm-hmm. And I feel like you see a little bit of that sometimes in the Bible, where even though things can have like really specific meanings, I think sometimes there's almost a little bit of mystery, because if the Bible was one dimensional, it would almost be like boring to read. It would almost be like, okay, that's it. It's really black and white. But because sometimes there's a little gray, because Jesus tells like a parable where it's like, here's a story and here's a thing that happens, and like there's kind of a meaning behind it like this, but it's still sort of a mystery. I think that allows you to basically sit and think about it. Like if somebody told you a mysterious story and then they tell you like, well, here's the secret to what the story means. As soon as you hear that, you're satisfied. You don't need to think about it anymore. You're like, okay, I have no more energy to meditate on whatever the story was, because I found the answer and it's done. It's like when you're playing some kind of like puzzle or a game, and you're like spend hours and you're working on it, and like, how do I win? How do I make this like puzzle fit together, or whatever this thing is? And then you finally get it, and like, the puzzle is complete. And it's like, now I never need to touch that thing again, you know?
Yeah.
And I think that Jesus portrays things in a way that's slightly mysterious, kind of these parables, these stories. Tolkien wrote something with a certain level of mystery to it. Yes, I think there is some like subtle symbolism, but he kind of like tried to make it, at least the way that he describes himself, he tried to make it in such a way that it wasn't like a 1-to-1 ratio allegory. There's like multiple levels of interpretation for things, so that the story would have continual depth, so it would make you continue to ponder it, so that it never really got boring or old. And I feel like that's how the Bible is. It never gets boring or old. You think of Lord of the Rings, it's like, at least for me, I never get bored with Lord of the Rings. It never seems to get old to me. Yeah. And I think that's because there's a level of mystery that created that depth. Yeah. So that's what's inspiring to me right now.
Yeah. Well, and I think that, both comes through having very like rich symbolism, I guess, or like powerful themes, maybe is the right word of saying it. Where it's like you have powerful themes that are, whatever, but then you also have like a lot of loose threads where he has like this whole world, and it's like he might mention, this is something that always kind of intrigued me, especially from like the Fellowship of the Ring. They would be like walking through an area and they'd be like, well, there's the whole ruins of the old kingdom of this place, and then the rights came out, and it's like there's like 3 sentences on it, and it's like, whoa, you just glossed over like a huge thing, like that's like, there's
the kingdom of Ardor.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. You're like okay, and so it does leave like that mystery in your head after that, because it's like it opens a door that never gets discovered, I guess, unless you really nerd out, and even then you can't figure everything out, because he didn't write anymore. So it kind of like opens the door to your imagination at that point. So that's something that's always stuck out to me.
Yeah. So now, just thinking about the idea of like the creation of stories, right? We both like the world of storytelling and writing and fiction, and we think about that a lot. We talk about it,
That is a true statement.
Yes, the statement is correct. Do you feel like in your idea of storytelling you want to tell stories that have really direct correlation to like a certain symbol, or you want to leave it sort of open-ended. It's like, it could mean anything.
I think there's a middle ground there.
Okay.
As with most things in life. Because I think Tolkien was honestly the same way. It's like he didn't. Because if you go full deconstructionist where anything can mean anything, then nothing means anything.
Ooh, deep. Oh my gosh.
Clip that. No, I'm just kidding. It's just basic, it's like, it's the problem like postmodernism finds itself in, where it's like, yeah, you can deconstruct what it means to be a family, what it means to be a society, all this kind of stuff, but then you're just like living in your own feces, tearing your selves apart in, what was that place in Portland? Chadland?
Chaz. I think Chaz was in Seattle. But I mean, it also happened back in the French Revolution, where they were like, tear down all the traditions and the monarchy and religion, and we'll be completely free thinkers with rationale. And then it was like, life is meaningless. We all hate ourselves.
Yeah.
Anyway.
So.
And we got a lot of great poetry out of it.
Debatable. But
poetry that I personally don't read, and but it was good at the time.
Someone said it was good.
Somebody thought it was good. Some English professor thought it was good.
Yeah. So yeah, you have to have like some amount of pattern or meaning in there, and so it's really just what are you like? What patterns are you picking up on that are you putting in? Because I think putting in a pattern. Like, I'm obsessed with symbolism and patterns, so I'm gonna always drag everything back here and beat it down with a dead horse.
You masculine man, you analytical man, you.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah,
yeah,
that's okay. I accept that. I'll join you, actually.
Thanks. I don't know. I actually think I'm probably more feminine in a lot of ways, honestly, but
not in this particular way.
Yeah, probably not in this way.
Yeah. Right now, what we're talking about.
But basically patterns.
Oh, right.
And so you pull in, because like a pattern can also be like patterns are at such like a deep fundamental level that like people can't. I don't think they can pick up all of what's there. And so if you can. And you can use a pattern without understanding it either. That's like the weird thing. So, it's like you can use the tropes of good and evil, as this pattern. It's like you don't fully understand what good and evil means, like that's such a wild thing. It's like, what does that fully entail? Why is something like inherently wrong to the world and something is inherently right? Does it like come from God's nature? Is it, I mean, you might have ideas or theories or whatever, but to like try to understand the mechanistic metaphysics of like two forces like battling it out in the universe for like dominance of, I guess, the way of life, it's like you could debate that endlessly. But you can throw in the trope of orcs and elves, and it's like you're using the pattern, but it's such a deep ingrained thing in us that it's like, how do you so like it's naturally going to have some mystery,
right,
because the pattern's so deep. But you can use the trope.
No, you're right. Like, obviously, things have to have meaning in Lord of the Rings, or else it doesn't make sense. There has to be good, there has to be evil, there has to be people who have, like, moral ideas of, like, Saruman, you betrayed us. No, that's just moral relativity.
That's like your opinion, man.
That's just your opinion, man. Yeah, I know, right? He's got a white robe and everything. Oh, Saruman, the Big Lebowski. Oh my gosh. Anyway.
Saruman the dude. Saruman the dude.
Saruman the dude. Dude, that's a Halloween costume.
He's got a white Russian in his hand and
a staff.
Yeah.
And a palantir.
Yeah.
Oh man. Okay. Anyway. Yeah, like obviously something, things have to have meaning and value to them, or else the story doesn't make sense. But what degree of meaning do they have? And how many levels, how much depth does the meaning go into? I think that's what Tolkien was like. I think he was trying to say there's not a whole lot of depth to the meaning. It's just a fun story, and if you find depth out of it, you're like pulling that out on your own. Like, I'm not implanting that.
I think he's a tricksy guy.
Yeah, you think he's a golem?
I think he's just talking.
He's a tricksy hobbit.
I think he's, yeah. Like, I think he knows exactly what he's doing, but he's
Yeah.
like playing it off like it's,
Mm.
you know, some sort of like, oh, it's just a fantasy adventure.
Yeah.
And maybe not, but
Yeah.
he seemed like a pretty smart guy. I don't think he
Yeah.
was like completely ignorant of what he was doing.
Yeah.
Like,
No, I agree with you. I agree.
like,
I was just playing Gollum's advocate.
Sauron's advocate.
Yeah.
Not the devil. Not the devil.
Yeah, yeah. Just worm tongue.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, it's like, and I don't know, I guess, yeah, because he was like, dude, he was translating Beowulf and stuff, and he knew about like pattern and structure and like,
yeah.
you know, all this, you know, meaning put forward. So it's like he was very in tune with all that stuff.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, I mean, like I can see the not one-to-one allegory, like that makes total sense.
Yeah.
But as far as like, you know, not putting in things he believed, it's like, get out of here.
I know. Okay. I mean, it's like literary scholar for, you know, whatever, 30 years or something.
Yeah.
Professor. And he can't put like some secret things inside of his book. Like, nah.
Yeah. Devout Catholic.
Yeah.
Like super moral, like compass.
And you just read the story and it's like, well, there's some things that really look like some Christian themes going on here, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Those Gandalf rose from the dead. It's like,
yeah. I mean, and whether like, you know, even, you know, whatever, it's like, you know, I mean, he pulled stuff straight from Beowulf, like in certain cases, you know, with like the dragon in the mountain and, you know, going inside and stealing the treasure. Like it's a very ancient pattern that's been like put in place. You know, it's like, I don't know. You even think of like Alibaba and the 40 Thieves, you know, it's like going in the cave and like stealing or getting the treasure back out. And there's like danger.
The lamp.
Mm-hmm.
Rub this lamp, little boy. Yeah.
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 You know, so it's like
Aladdin's a creepy story.
Yeah.
Anyway, all right.
Yeah, but there's just like so many, you know, different archetypes of like going into like a deep place. It's the hero's journey again, you know. So
hero's
it's like
journey. That's right.
Yeah, you go into the underworld and you get the treasure and you come back out. You know, it's like he knew this stuff. It wasn't like he was, you know, he wasn't just making stuff up out of nowhere. Like he wrote it after he read Beowulf.
Yeah.
So,
well, so then that's interesting. So then we come to. I want to come back to the original question that I had is it's like, if you're writing a story, you know, which we like writing stories, then how much meaning do you put into the story? You know, how much do you make the story have a direct symbolism to something? And does that make it too one-dimensional or
as much as you possibly can?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I don't, like it doesn't. Have you ever tried to, I guess, draw?
Mm-hmm.
Have you ever like tried to copy someone's style?
Mm-hmm.
And like, have you been successful at it?
Not really.
Yeah.
I'm not super good at drawing.
Okay. Is there, okay, maybe like, I don't know. I don't know if this applies to massage necessarily, but have you like, do people have like different massage styles?
Uh-huh.
Have you like tried to like copy somebody's style like very closely?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
Does it work or is it like kind of hard to do?
Gosh, I mean, that'd be super hard to say because you'd have to have the same person you're working on try your copy and the original person's, and they would have to subjectively tell you the difference. That'd be really, really hard.
Yeah.
But
or I guess
possibly.
maybe have you had similar massages from like two people? Like,
yeah.
Or
Or
could you like tell, is there like markers that make like people's like different massages on you different?
Yeah. Like okay. So like, if I was just face down in the massage table and like 50 different people came in and gave me different massages, and then I had to like decide whose massage was who.
Or even just like three people maybe.
Yeah. It's like I don't know if I'd be able to tell the differences, you know, like at a certain, like there might be some people who stand out as being really unique, but a lot of people, it'd feel like kind of just all feels the same.
Okay. So maybe like two people, do you think you could tell the difference between?
Yeah. I think if there were just two people,
yeah,
I could probably pick out the differences.
Yeah. So it's like an A/B test when you're like, you know, going for glasses.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So basically the point I'm getting at is like, I think people have different styles or like, you know, whatever makes up you kind of just naturally flows into the world. And so you'll never be able to like, I mean, you can try to like recreate someone's art perfectly, but at that point you're just taking a picture of it, right?
Mm.
But if you're just putting any of your own artistic merit into it, like your work's naturally going to come out differently, I think. And so, like, I think you can even, that's how it's like, I think that's how Tolkien can take Beowulf and, you know, the mountain and the dragon and stealing the treasure and make his own story out of it. And it's like literally the same thing, but, you know, he adds his hobbits and he adds his, you know, the weak spot in the dragon or whatever his, you know, little flair is, or the thrush, you know, it's like, you know, it's all these things that really bring it into a new level. And so it's like, you took the same basic pattern, but now you just, you know, put your own artistic creativity into it and made it carry on the tradition while also breathing new life into it for a new culture and a new, you know, reader base, I guess.
Yeah.
And so I think that's all we do as artists, or should do as artists. Maybe should is a strong word, but what like good artistry is about, it's about preserving the pattern while updating it for modern culture and modern times.
Yeah. Taking Hamlet and turning it into the Lion King.
Yeah, probably. I mean, the Lion King inspired Jordan Peterson a bunch, so all those Disney movies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So artists just need to start with the pattern.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think that's, or, I mean, there's different types of arts in some sense. Like, I think
storytelling has a certain pattern, but yeah, maybe other things could be different.
Well, yeah, and different mediums kind of express different things. You know, it's like where, you know, abstract painting might be a more emotional experience. You know, it's like writing can be more technical. I mean, and writing can even be emotional too. It's like you have poetry or something like that. But yeah, I think it's just knowing what kind of medium you're in. And if you're in a very like pattern heavy one, I think, yeah, carry on the patterns and like, because again, it's like, you know, with that thing of like devolving into chaos or like, you know, the no meaning thing, it's like the closer you get to that, the more, I guess, the more you run out of significance, I guess, until you get like, you know, the urinal plastered on the art wall of the museum, you know, and like, this is art now, you know, it's just like, whatever. It's like, okay, I guess it's provocative, but it's not like, doesn't have any.
Dude, when I was in London, I went to the Tate Modern, you know, the Modern Museum.
Yeah.
And there was an exhibit that was just two 2x4 pieces of wood just leaning up against each other. And I was looking at that like, wow.
We've reached the pinnacle of evolution.
There's a lot of construction workers who are brilliant.
Yeah. That's funny.
It's like, it wasn't that hard to make that. Like, I don't know what this is supposed to mean. It's like, is there meaning in the piece of art just because of the weird little thing that you read on the side that explains it? It's like, this shows that the trees are supporting each other even after they're dead. It's like, is there some weird meaning, you know, in that? Or should it only be meaningful just on what I see and experience from it itself? No explanations needed. I don't know. Anyway,
yeah.
Little rant, small rant there.
I mean, we can go into that tangent if you want, but I think
no. I want to go back to the patterns.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. No. Yeah. So I think like if you just, because like these patterns aren't going to go away, right? You know, it's like the idea of the hero's journey, or, you know, death and resurrection, or good versus evil, or, you know, self-sacrifice. These concepts aren't going to go away, and so they're never going to be out of style, in a sense, or like the pattern won't, at least. You know, it's like the story that contains those patterns might, or people might lose interest in that and not want to go read, I don't know, the Iliad anymore or something. But again, they'll go watch Lion King or you know, those kinds of things. So.
Well, that's interesting because if we create modern forms of the past, it keeps the story alive. And it makes people interested in the past. Because I think once people know, oh, this is a reflection of an older story, maybe I should go back and I should read that older story, you know? You have The Lion King with Hamlet. You have things like Oh, Brother, Where Art Thou? With the Odyssey. You know, you've got like The Matrix.
All our topics are converging.
I know,
in
right?
One episode.
Ooh. You've got like The Matrix with the resurrection. Like I totally remember the first like 2 times I ever watched The Matrix. I was like, this movie is so cool, but I have no idea what it's about. And it's just so confusing and like my brain hurt. And finally somebody explained to me, oh, don't you understand? Neo is the one, like the number one, like number one in a computer. And he's also Jesus. And as soon as somebody explained those two things to me, I was like, what? This movie's so epic. And it was like, it was the coolest thing ever after that.
It also helped that every pastor was showing clips of it in their Sunday
Yeah,
services.
that's right. Yeah, there were a bunch of, I totally remember some youth pastors I knew who were like, we really want to show this, but it's R. Do all the parents approve? Like, it's basically okay.
won't show any of the parts of the cussing.
Yeah. It did not get approved, by the way. Yeah, they were disappointed. They just had to explain it, which did not do the same thing.
So there's this really cool part where he jumps out with guns. And you're like, okay.
And they're all wearing leather.
Someone say leather, daddy.
Oh, man. Oh, gosh.
Nice. Yeah. So, I mean, I'm guessing you have an opinion on whether Tolkien was writing. Like, what do you think he was doing with the stories?
Yeah, I mean,
Tricksy man.
I think that there were some symbolisms that he put in purposefully. And I think without a doubt, there's symbolism in there. And he probably had a lot, like you were saying, that just came out of him naturally and the flow of his mind and his thought that created symbolisms, maybe even subconsciously. Yeah, and I don't think a person could create a story without some level of meaning within it, just depending on how deep they want to go with that meaning, you know? Yeah, it gives me a lot to think about, you know? How ambiguous and mysterious do you make a story? And then do you create something that unlocks the mystery, or do you leave it as a mystery, you know? And then if you leave it as a mystery, does that make people think about it and they enjoy thinking about it? Or does it just confuse people and then they don't like your story? You know?
I would go to a quote by a man named Jesus, where he said, those who have ears to hear, let them hear, you know? It's like, I think when you create the mystery, so again, going back to the Virgin Mary and like the Queen of Sheba, it's like, or the Sphinx even, you know, you're creating this potential space where then when someone interacts with it, you can basically have a mini creation of something. And so, you know, by presenting the mystery, presenting this ambiguous space that people can interact with, then the people who are like, I think, on the path of truth or whatever, or like, you know, have the ears to hear, like they're going to engage with those things. And if the underlying patterns are based in truth, or like the structure of reality in some sense, then like they're going to get fruit from that. And so it's like, yeah. And so, you know, I mean, even like the idea of the mysterious space again, like, you know, let's go to uterus back there. You know, it's like, what do you call a child? It's like the fruit of the womb, right?
Like the seed.
Yeah, or like the seed even, yeah, or like the fruit of the womb, or, you know, it's like, you know, children are like the fruit of marriage, or, you know, it's like all these different ideas of like, you know, this is this area of like fertile soil that's like mysterious, and then once it's been like interacted with, or like the information has been given, or the I guess better way is like order has been given to it, you know, it's like genetic order, whatever you want to call that kind of thing, you know?
Sperm, is that genetic order for the woman's uterus?
I was saying it without saying it, but
I saw it.
Yeah. And so, you know, it's like then you get the physical like combining of those two things, and so it's like the potential meets the imposed order or something, you know, or like this information informs this like unformed space, and so then you get that. So I think parables are a great way of doing that, where it's like you create this mysterious space, and then people kind of like dwell in it, and like, you know, because you always see it too, people like read into parables or like more ambiguous stories, and so it's like you might even get into clashes with people over that, where it's like, you know, you see these mysterious verses in the Bible, and it's like you ask 10 people and there's 10 different ideas over it, you know, and it's like it's because they're putting their own meaning into it, you know. It's like everyone wants to just say read it objectively, and like, well, it clearly says that, just read it objectively. If you did that, then you would know what it means. And it's like, well, that's not maybe what it is. Maybe it is like just a mysterious, ambiguous thing that is meant to like draw out what you believe and like inform, help, draw out what you believe, I guess, into the real world and like manifest it. So,
like in Psalm chapter 1, it talks about meditate on the word of God day and night. And I feel like meditation on something, to like think, to ponder, to wonder about something, it almost doesn't make sense to me if it's really clear. Like if the subject matter is really clear and obvious, then you're just going to memorize it. And then it's like, this is factual data, But I mean, even things that are factual data, like the legal system, it's like as factual as they can try to get with that, like clear out any ambiguous language. It is like super clear.
See paragraph D, section C, clause 3.
You still have lawyers who are like, well, it could be interpreted this way. Like, we are going to find a way to derive whatever meaning we want out of this, you know? And it's like, I think that you can always find room to meditate on something and see it from a new light. Even if it is something with really direct, like A equals B. There is no ambiguity. Somebody will find a way, Did Jesus really say not eat from the tree,
That's the first lawyer.
That was the first lawyer. Oh, my gosh. Wow.
That's a good lawyer joke right there, dude.
Yeah.
Huh. All right.
And what happened from that? The womb was painful and cursed. Anyway. All right. I better stop while I'm ahead. You know what you guys need to do if you're still listening this far? Take a little salt. Just pour it right into your ear. And
what does that do?
I don't know. I'm just trying to make it funny about take it with a grain of salt.
Oh, okay.
Don't really pour salt in your ears. I don't think there's any good reason to do that.
I heard otherwise.
Yeah, I don't know.
I'm sure there's some naturopath out there that recommends it.
I've heard about garlic in people's ears, but I've never heard about salt.
Huh.
Anyway,
people stick garlic in all kinds of weird places.
Yeah, they do. People, there's a weird magical thing with garlic.
Yeah.
Shove it up there.
You're cured.
It'll fix your large intestine.
Or it burned a hole in you. Either one. Should we end it there?
Yeah, we should end it while we're ahead.
Okay.
No, we already went too far.
Well, I think I'm going to have about a million things to bring up about this podcast next week.
Oh, gosh. Yeah. Thanks, people, for listening this far. Forgive us of our many sins.
God's grace is abundant.
Yes.
So,
cool. Peace out.
Thank you.
Chawaski.